Robinette, who's the pastor in Ohio, who is in charge of Mission to Myanmar to support them to a greater degree. And so I've come back to Mark and said, Mark, can you give us a financial statement? Can you give us anything that shows how you are using the money that people are giving you so that we can go back to our church and say, this is a real viable ministry, they're using things well for the right things. And you've probably experienced this with a lot of missions organizations. Oftentimes the people that are in charge are not necessarily the people who are organized people. They are the visionary fundraising people, right? And so Mark just kept coming back and saying, trust me, brother, it's a great ministry. And I keep coming back to Mark and saying, Mark, I'm responsible to our whole church. So decided to go and visit Myanmar. One, to see if this was a legitimate ministry and what they were doing with the funds, but also to teach in the Bible college that they have there for a week. And I was very blessed to be there and discovered that it is a legitimate and good ministry that's going on in Myanmar. And Mark was right all along. I should have just trusted him. But this is a Chin State. Could you go to the next slide? So what I've done is I've put together maybe 13, 14 slides that have embedded videos in it. And I wanted, there you are, Darren. Okay. So I just want to tell you a little bit about our trip so you can appreciate what happened while we were there. Okay, so this is arrival in Yangon. Can you press down there? You'll have to physically press on play. I got turned around again. Can you spin it on its side? Okay, so we arrived in Yangon after 28 hours. Darren did not sleep on my shoulder. So, contrary to what you learned last Disciple Makers, he never once put his head on my shoulder. We tried to sleep. We were, to various degrees, mostly unsuccessful. We flew from, that was a fun part of the start of the journey. Darren and I tried to figure out when we needed to leave to get to San Francisco. Unfortunately, David Gregg and Bill Hine had been over at their house the night before, convincing them that it takes 4 hours to get to San Francisco on a Monday morning. So finally, Darren and I said, okay, we'll just leave 4 hours before the air flight. So we left at 5 in the morning. We got there in San Francisco, and we enjoyed each other for a couple hours at the airport, right? And then we flew to Seoul, South Korea, had a relatively short layover, and then on into Yangon, Myanmar. But it was about 28 hours all told, and we arrived late at night. So go ahead and just play. So these are the streets of Yangon, and what you can notice, first of all, is that there are 4 million people in this city, and the streets are crowded with cars. Okay, what kinds of cars do you see primarily? Buses, vans. 50% of the drivers on the streets are taxi drivers. Matthew, go ahead and keep the sound down for a while. This is Nang Thong. I want you to remember him. He just said hi to us. There's Darren. And there's Dr. Troy Hampton. So Troy was there. Darren was there to help the people in the Bible college and the elders from the villages that traveled down to understand human medicine and animal medicine. Okay, go ahead and go to the next slide, Matthew. We were trying to explain to Nang Thong that one of the best ways to test our faith was to get in a car in Yangon. The thing you have to understand about the city, if you've never been to kind of a third world country or even a first world, but one that's densely populated like India, is that see how that car's kind of making his own lane? See, the one that went straight up ahead, that SUV, they made their own lane, and the buses make their own lanes. We would joke on how there were two lanes on the road that were drawn in, but there were really 3, and sometimes 4. And if your lane is going too slow, you start moving over to the side, and if you want to make a U-turn in the middle of the street, you just make a U-turn in the middle of the street. And there are people driving rickshaws and people walking across. There are no such things as crosswalks. You just start walking. And somehow it all works. But for a person from America, in California, who has to have a California driver's license and know how to drive in California, this was often terrifying, being in these cars. Okay, go ahead and go to the next slide. One of the true joys, and I would like you to put the volume up on this one, Matthew, was meeting the students and the elders. And go ahead and play this, Matthew. Okay. And then turn it up even louder. So we went from Yangon, we were taken to the Golden Guest Inn, which was like a bed and, well, they made breakfast for us in the mornings. It was a hotel, it caters primarily to Europeans, and so they have some European conveniences such as toilets in the rooms, which was nice. The exchange rate was amazing in Yangon, 1,200 Chat to $1 American dollar. And you can, a lavish meal. When I say meals, you have to understand in the context of a different country. When we say, they're right next border to 5 countries, Bangladesh, Laos, India, China, and Thailand. And being very close to Thailand, they are heavily influenced by Thai food. So if you like Thai food, curries, and spicy foods, Yangon is the place for you. And Yangon being a port city, a lot of seafood. So I was very happy with the food. But I would order like a shrimp curry, and they would bring this monstrous plate of steamed rice with 11 whole shrimp all on the shell, this long, all lined up that filled the entire plate, or a steamed sea turtle or whatever it was that they were making. But a dish of 11 shrimp like that across the plate in curry was equivalent to $6 of our money. And so everything was like that. A driver for the day who would take us the entire day and just wait, $20 American dollars. So our dollars bought a lot. And you'll see with the medicine we were able to buy in Yangon. We were able to buy asthma applicators and other types of things, medicines that were $80 to $150 a piece. We bought a whole table of medicine for them for $300. Okay, so meeting the students and elders. Matthew, you go ahead and fast forward to the second half of that video. No, is that at the end of the video? Okay, maybe I put on a different one. Okay, so you can go ahead and stop there. What I wanted you to see here, I don't know what you thought when you saw that first picture and you saw the dense jungle, and what you might have thought being with a class of Bible college students was going to be like from Yangon. Did you expect them to be singing songs that you recognized? Did you expect them to be sitting in plastic chairs? In a room like this. Here's the group. So we've got elders in the back. See, and mixed in a little bit in the middle of the group. We've got Bible college students over here, and up here on the front and over on the side. And what you need to understand, the way this is Nang Tong was born in the Chin State, became a believer, converted to nominal Christianity, which represents about 6% of the nation's religious profile. Myanmar is 75% or more Buddhist, with some other religions mixed in. The government recently changed. In 2010, there were hints of things happening because they opened the borders to American capitalism and European capitalism. And so a bunch of companies rushed in. You saw Hyundai listed there from South Korea, which is a very close neighbor to them. But you'll see Ford and other types of dealerships along the sides of the streets. American corporations came in thinking this is ripe for the picking because they've not been opened before in 2010. They had been governed by the military up until then. This created a natural propelling towards democracy in Myanmar, such that last year they had a democratic vote and the military government was voted out. So right now they're in the midst of transition. One of the things facing the people in Myanmar, especially the elders of the villages and churches, is that the government that just got elected made promises to all the men that they would pay 10 times the going rate for people to work for the new government if they were elected and supported as new government. So when you're talking about the majority of people in this country are impoverished, those kinds of offers are extremely tempting to men who are pastoring a church who are at the same time subsistence level farmers, barely able to survive the day, and they just experienced one of their worst floods of the decade last fall. Remember how some of you who were following Mission to Myanmar on Facebook saw the flood that happened? Well, it came out, Mark Robinette had bought for the Northern Village elders, had bought them a profit-making crop, East Indian arrowroot, so spice. That's a good turnaround profit. They had planted 5 acres up there, and the flood wiped all the acreage out. So when we got there, these men came 8 to 15 hours down to Yangon to benefit and be blessed for this week, even though they blessed us just as much or more. But they came down in the midst of just trying to rebuild their lives in these villages. And so one of the things that they're hoping to do is find out ideas. So each night we sat with the elders and just said, well, what can you do? Are you going to replant? Are you going to do a fish farm? Are you going to raise, what was the name that you guys kept messing up over and over? Mitham, yes.
You said Mitham, they say Mitham.
No, they
don't say T, it just says T, but it's actually a TH.
No, I think they were saying that you were supposed to say Mitham, but Mark kept saying Mitham. Well, all right, so it's still an issue as to what they're called. So raising the cattle, doing a fish farm, doing another set of crops. What are they going to do when they're being offered by the government 10 times the wage to come and work for the government? So our visit there, part of it was for these elders a test of their faith. Are they going to trust in the Lord and keep pastoring their churches and not be drawn to the cities to work in the government? I want you to be praying for those men because of that. And some of those men are along that back row. The guy in the orange vest is an evangelist to the Rakhine people who are very hostile to Christianity. They're further up the coast, but they're a village area. The man to his right in the gray sweater is an elder, and two over is a man that serves with him. And then over here, as we move down, these two men also are elders. And then the gentleman in the blue shirt there in the middle is an elder. To his right is a deacon. And then two over, they're wearing the little pack, and the peach shirt is an elder. Pray for these guys. Go ahead to the next slide. Darren and I had an opportunity to look at some of the cultural history of Myanmar. This is a palace that is a boat. This is the Karawake Palace, and it belonged to a prince centuries ago, and now is a floating restaurant. But isn't that impressive? He would float up and down the river there in Rangoon. And this is the boat up close, not quite as impressive looking at it from this angle. Nang Tong, I put this in here. Can you go ahead and press play for a second? Watch Nang Tong. Oh, he's sideways. So, I was telling you a little bit about Nang Tong earlier. He was born in the Chin State. 6% of the nation is Christian, nominal Christian, because if you know the name Adoniram Judson, he was the missionary that came in the 19th century and converted especially the northern portion of Myanmar to Christianity. The American Baptists are the primary denomination represented amongst this people. But they were more committed when they were first converted, and time has kind of eroded that and mixed in with their Christianity old animism, spiritism. So even when we're talking with more informed and educated men, still sometimes when they're telling stories, when it borders on the supernatural, you're hearing this fascination not only with the supernatural and spiritual aspect, which certainly we need to learn from them in that, but mixed in that is kind of this sometimes fearfulness of the demonic and the evil eye and some of those things that attend the animistic, spiritist roots. So that's one of the ministries that we have to them, is to try to help them reform even more their theology. What is neat about Nang Tong is he was part of that nominal Christianity, and there was a gentleman that came through his village that was a Reformed minister. How rare is that here in Myanmar? Nang Tong came and listened, wanted to prove him wrong, ended up following him to a few different villages and listening to him over and over again, eventually comes to that understanding and decides, I need to be a part of re-educating the Christian people of my nation. And so he moves down to Yangon. And he starts an orphanage, and he starts a Bible college, and is active in the government from the standpoint that he is the director of the Commission on Religious Liberty there in Myanmar. So he's a very active, smart guy. And one thing that is very tempting for people like Americans who come in is, first of all, we come in at this great exchange rate, and we think, oh, we have all of this to offer, and here, we're going to bring in our money, and we're going to bring in our education. Because you guys who don't understand our language and haven't read our books, you don't know a lot, you don't have a lot of money, you can't appreciate the things that we Americans have to offer. And so it's also tempting as we hear them translate, kind of stumble through English to think about their education level or their understanding level. We cannot have the temptation to think that they are somehow less literate or less intelligent, less faithful than we are. They are a different cultural context. But they are actually very bright people, is what I came to understand. And Nang Tong is a very intelligent man. And he has been trying to run this Bible college under a Reformed prospectus, which is a 4-year course of studies, and I'll look at it with you at the end, and taking them through full study of the Bible, systematic theology, all of these things that you would say, these are what I want to learn in school. Okay. So, did you fix that with Nang Tong up here? Now watch Nang Tong, because he's obviously, see him sigh? There's Mark Robinette. Nong hates being the center of attention, but what's going on in the background? There's country music being played right across the river over here. This is another strange aspect. Here we are at the Karawake Palace. Mark's trying to film a marketing piece, for lack of a better word, for Mission to Myanmar with Nang Tong, who doesn't like being the center of attention. And we've got this country western music playing in the background at some little resort that Americans have made. And the Westons building their tower. Everybody's building around this very centralized tourist area. You hate to see, but it's again kind of stereotypical when a country opens to capitalism, that not only do the corporations come in, but the tourist industries, the hotels come in, they build around the tourist center, and pretty soon the Americans are setting up their little resort and playing country music, and so that's a part of this mix here in Myanmar. Go ahead to the next one. Now this is a Shwedagon Pagoda. This is probably what Myanmar is most known for in terms, just let the video play. In terms of Buddhist culture, Buddhism represents 80% of the country's religion. The Shwedagon Pagoda, this is all marble. You have to walk with bare feet. Take off your shoes at the entrance. And there is little worship shrine after worship shrine after worship shrine after worship shrine. You've got folks kneeling before, and here's this is all gold. Everything is gold covered, real gold. Tons and tons of gold. I had to wear a longi because they wouldn't let me, my shorts were down to here, but they wouldn't, in terms of respect, which was fine. So I had to put on one of these longis to come in and walk in and take off my shoes. But see, this whole complex stretches for how many acres, Darren? 5, 10 acres? In the middle of things, you have the tourists walking around and taking pictures, but you also have people sitting down or kneeling down and they're worshiping. You've got people, see how they're pouring water on the idol? I don't know if you saw that little sign, but it said Saturday something. If you were born on here's Saturday corner. See here it says that on that little red sign? If you're born on a Saturday, and you come and you pour water on the idol and let it run down, you get blessings. And there will be processions that walk through in the middle of things. And people, it's just weird. You're walking through and all of that's taking place. And I have another video that I took to show you. I thought it was oppressive in a sad sort of way. It was, especially when the video I show you in just a moment that I took. All right, go on to the next video, Matthew. This is the video I took. When the government changed, one of the things that changed was the Commission on Religious Liberty. And go ahead and just start playing it. And there is now passed into law the recognition of Christianity as one of the major religions of Myanmar. That's a positive. Ning Tong has worked hard to help make that be a reality. But the Buddhists came back and said, we want you to make it a law that nobody can convert from one religion to the next religion. So Christianity is not a persecuted religion in Myanmar, but Buddhists by law are not allowed to convert from Buddhism to Christianity, and vice versa. What's that? I don't know what the penalty is. It's still actually in the process of being argued through. But right now, it's currently law. Okay, this is us walking that same marble area. Go ahead and turn the volume up on this, Matthew.
Each one of these in a different way.
So each different Buddha or God, if you will, in Buddhism has its own little shrine or place. Remember the last time that you saw the main pagoda, it had scaffolding all around it because they were replating the gold. Every once in a while it'll swing around on the video. There it is. See it? That is an impressively beautiful, in a sad way, golden edifice. Okay, so we're coming to what I thought, especially being a father with the kids. Okay, turn back down the volume for a minute, Matthew. I'm just going to let this play until we get to the kids. They had a whole group of young children all doing the chants with the shaved heads and so on. It was a really sad part of our visit here to the Shwedagon Pagoda. With the country being primarily Buddhist, you have the culture of Buddhism throughout the city. And so one of the things, the Buddhists, you may think of them as being more intellectual and meditation oriented and so on. They're actually very, very, oh man, we got me putting in the lonji. Okay. Thankfully, Ning Tong was there to help me. You don't need to watch that part. But but they're very in your face. Yes, it was a little large for me. They're very in your face, and there are posters all over the city saying who's going to speak when. And when they spoke, remember Darren, late at night or in the morning, you would just hear this loudspeaker because they tried to be as loud as possible. It doesn't matter. You know, whereas we worship here in the church, they worship out on the street, and they would be doing the loud speaking through the loudspeakers. They have to this point been also very, like I said, hostile to Christianity. They're very bold about asking questions in a confrontational way with regard to how could we possibly believe this or that about Christianity. So, this is part of our understanding of Myanmar. This is part of what the Christians in Mission to Myanmar are working through. They're working in an environment that's 80% Buddhist, that is hostile to them, that the law has just said that you cannot convert from Buddhism to Christianity. They're working against nominal Christianity. They're, from a Reform perspective, the only one in the city of 4 million people, in Yangon. And Nang Tong put together this orphanage in which there are approximately 12 children of varying ages, and then a school, a Bible college, at which the students from the orphanage will graduate into, and they typically have gone through the studies there, but also the elders of the various churches in the villages come down for training, or other children are sent down to be trained. And they are taught that 4-year course of studies that I was telling you about. When we got there, the northern villages had gone through the flood, and the city of Yangon, Nang Tong, the orphanage, had been torn down due to termite damage. And so it's in the process of being rebuilt. So that's another thing that you can be praying about. I'm trying to wait for this group of children because I want you to see that. It'll be in just a moment that we come up to it. The other thing I will say about Nang Tong and the people and the school is that we have offered to Nang to have one. We told Nang, if you have a young man who you think is going to be a future teacher for the school, who will come alongside of you, our family would be interested in having him come and live with us. So we've extended that invitation to Nang, and we think either at Presbytery this year or at the latest next Presbytery, his younger brother is going to come and live with us. And so that you see, Nang Tong, Nang is actually the last name, Tong is the first name. Tong Nang is how we would say it here. So Tong is his name, and his brother is Ha. And Ha is a neat guy, has some fairly minimal English skills because they do take 3 years of English in their schooling. What we asked Tong was, please make sure that your brother has enough of a facility, an ease with English, that he doesn't spend his whole time here just becoming proficient in English. Because my desire was to be able to not only help him improve his English, but also to be able to mentor him in the scriptures, so that when he goes back to... Oh, here, turn this volume up, will you? I stood here for a long time, mostly just sad about the situation. These kids have been taken from their homes. They are now Buddhist disciples. They spend a lot of their day doing this. They spend the rest of their day carrying a bowl around the city looking for contributions. That becomes the way they support themselves for their life. Every day relying upon contributions. And it's not, obviously these young men and women are being faithful, but they're faithful obviously to darkness, and so it was sad. Okay, go ahead and go to the next slide, Matthew. Home life. Ever since I've been back, some of the things that I appreciate about home here, space. Every time I look out at big space, as I walked even into the church this morning and looked at the grassy fields, I go, wow, we are so blessed. But also just even though we are in secular humanism, we still have the blessing of a Judeo-Christian culture and history and heritage. And we have a freedom and a liberty to worship here. It is not the same here, so that's another thing, but just even daily life. What I want you to see is what it's like to live as one of the 85% of the impoverished families. You know, you guys have jobs, you go to work, you bring home a level of income that for there, obviously would be huge. And most of the people here, they never leave about 5 blocks from their home. They rent or own kind of a shack-like home, and they're all right next to each other. And they typically wall off their homes from the street because so much is going on in the street. The only way to get privacy is to wall off your home and have a little gate that opens up into your property. Because right outside the wall of your home is the market, your market. So the way you work is you set up a little market stall right out in front of your house on the street, and you sell chicken on a stick, or you sell t-shirts, or you mend clothing, whatever it is that your skill is. And if you want to go shopping, you literally don't have to go further than 5 blocks. I mean, you probably don't have to go further than a block in any direction because there's a barber just 3 houses down. Right, Darren? I mean, you had the barber 3 houses down, you had the person fixing clothes, and the clothes to buy, chicken on a stick. Go ahead. And 1,000 slum dogs, right, Darren? 1,000,000 slum dogs, all of the same breed. All of them pregnant. Okay, so this is a good example of, this is Nang Tong's house. There at night, we were there to visit with the elders. Over to the side, in this area is the work area. You can't see it because it's dark. But this is where they were starting at that time to lay the foundation, start the steel girders for the new orphanage that we're trying to help fund and build. And this is where the school they're going to teach the school, go on to the next slide, and where they're going to run the orphanage. We did have an opportunity to go to the market. I had a pair of prescription eyeglasses, a pair of prescription sunglasses, and a pair of prescription reading glasses made for me in less than 2 hours for $130. And these were titanium, the Slazenger titanium, bendable, Polo, Ralph, whatever, the fancy brands, eyeglasses for everything for $135. Everything was cheap here. Even the strawberries that Mark fed me, and that's what we're going to find out about next.
All right, I'm at the local market, and I have just purchased some fresh strawberries, and this could be my last video. And he fed me one, and I shared, just like Eve. Shared them with the people I love. Yep. And as I was swallowing the strawberry, so Dayton comes over, running, and says, "Spit it out!" What he actually said, he said, even people like me are local, so are local. We're not afraid to eat such things. So this kind of has to cost us a word, but just so you think about bumpers, I'll show you how pretty they look. Do you think that'll help? No, he said they pump it full of. He said they do pump it full of medicine gel. But this is where I buy the strawberries. Now these will be good for me. They will not make me sick. They will be good. I'm not really convinced of that, but it looks like things are pretty good chance I'll be sick.
He says, "Is there a chance I'll be sick?" Yes. Yes.
He said there's a pretty good chance I'm going to get sick. So, well, we're going to find out.
Okay, so You do not drink the water there. You do not eat anything that has been washed with the water there, including strawberries. You don't eat some of the local produce because it's been pumped with medicine color, as Nang Tong says, which, just pumped with chemicals to make it look edible. And so the locals know not to eat some of the food, unlike the tourists like us. So I ate the one, and we were already on doxycycline all week because of the chance for malaria through the mosquitoes. But we figured if we got sick, then it was really a problem because we were full of that other medicine. All right, next slide. Go ahead and do that video.
Out there, it's Mark Robinette and the team.
That's where we stayed.
And we have had a pretty incredible day, would you say? And God has done some amazing things. I would like to start off by saying what I think was the most amazing thing for me today. It happened toward the end of the day, just a little bit ago, so as a result, I'm still kind of spinning for the whole thing. We were able to spend some quality time with the elders from a place called Montupi, and they were hit really hard in a cyclone earlier this year, and we were able to raise some money to bless them. But I don't think we had any idea about what we really did. According to them, when the storm hit, they lost their roads, they lost their phones, they lost all these things. So they had no idea anyone knew that they had a problem. They had no idea that help could even come. And they literally said, so we figured we would probably starve to death. That's what they said. And they said, so they prayed. And they said, when the first truckload of rice came, then it was
This is a rice that we sent, by the way. Some of you who donated for rice, that was the actual truck delivering the rice that you guys paid for.
And literally saved their lives. So as they explained to us, they said people in the church that were kind of casual church members are now serious church members. And they had a few families who weren't part of the church at all who said, we have found that when everything falls apart, then we can go to God and He will answer our prayers. And they joined the church. Dr. Troy was able to go to the pharmacy today and tell us a little bit about what you found there, what you were able to leave the people with.
Yeah, so we did our annual pharmacy trip, about $350 worth of medications, and the impressive thing about that is we bought an entire table full of medicine.
That's Hog, by the way, that little young man in the coat that would be coming.
You can spend $300 on 3 of those mealers alone, but we're equipping 3 of the main areas where the elders are to treat probably for a prolonged period of time for multiple different maladies. And so took the opportunity to put that together today, but also spent time with all of the church members and listening to their complaints, listening to heart loans, trying to identify. I think
Again, that's Hall over there on the right.
we've done in the past, and it really blessed those souls to encourage them with the love we showed them.
Remember that woman for a second.
Medicine we were able to buy, we had the problems they didn't deal with, and it's just a privilege to be a part of that.
And one of the most fun things that happened today, which you'll probably see pictures of, is the investment we made into the people here of violins and some lessons has paid off. And we have come back this year and they're playing songs for us. Most of all, they look like they're having a whole lot of fun and enjoying it. And so, what a great blessing for us to be able to bring music into their life, medicine into their life, food where they need it, and it to be the answer to their prayers. Thank you so much for your generosity that made it possible, and we just look forward to giving you some more good news in the future.
That's Ning Tong's wife and son. That girl right beforehand has lost both of her parents and her siblings to malaria. So she's one of the orphans that goes to the Bible college now. So I said, remember that lady, interesting thing, with all the green tattooing on her face? It's permanent tattooing from when she was young. It is traditional in the villages that the pretty girls get taken by older men and without any voice in the matter. And so a lot of the prettier girls tattoo their faces permanently so that they will not be chosen by older men. So she has worn a green face for her entire life. There was also the girl that had the gold cheeks. That's much less permanent. That's actually from a tree bark, I think. It's a natural sunscreen, but it becomes a little bit of a decoration for a lot of the kids. And so they like to make circles on their face or other types of shapes and patterns because it's fun and artistic and it's protecting their face from the sun. All right, almost out of slides. Next slide. Yep, this is the current students there at the Bible College, not counting any of the elders. Esther, which is up here from the top right, and then over one is sister-in-law to Nang Tong. That's his wife's younger sister. All great kids, ranging in age from about, there's the girl that lost her family on the bottom left. All great kids ranging from about 18 to 24. And the next one is my final slide, and this is what they study their first year. You see English, worship, theological foundation, hermeneutics, Old Testament introduction, the book of Romans, Bible geography, pastoral theology, Christian education, major prophets, and then going on over to the cults. You think of funny things. I mean, we think of it here in America, and we think, wow, we need to know about the cults, go over there. Well, they need to know about it too in Burma. So, theology 2, Calvinism, covenantal structure, the Bible, the Synoptic Gospels. I looked at this and I looked at their teaching and so on, and the one question I have, which I'm still wanting to get answered, and Tong's going to be working with me. I've been asked to serve on the board of this college, and one thing that I want to know is, this is a great prospectus. What does it mean? What's the curriculum and what are you studying and what resources do you have? And so I'm hoping to be able to help them going forward from this. So the last thing I will say, you can go ahead and turn on the lights and turn off the presentation. The last thing I will say is, what can we do as a church? Well, we can do a couple things. First, on a very simple practical level, and I didn't bring them today, I didn't even think to bring them. I brought home a lot of stuff from the market. Talk about the money difference. I bought what you guys and gals are going to think is cool. And that is slingshots with the handle is made out of this strong, like an ironwood type of wood that's been carved into different animals, whether it's an elephant or a tiger or whatever. And it's got the rubber sling from the rubber tree that's native to Myanmar. I'm going to be selling those for $20, and all of the money is going to go to the mission of Myanmar. I bought them for $2 a piece. $2 a piece. And I have something else, I think, for the girls. Darren, you had your suitcase filled with stuff for the girls, right? So that's the simplest thing. The next thing that we can do and be challenged to do is to think sacrificially in terms of giving to Myanmar. And part of that can just be giving financially to the ministry there. Still needing to raise some money to finish building the orphanage school there in Yangon. Still have specific needs for the elders to try and get back on their feet. And trust me, these men, you saw them in the pictures, they are the sweetest men, and they are not men who are going, what can you do for us, our big American papa? You know, they're not saying that. They're saying, we know that we have a few different options, and we've already been trying to do some research on what it will take to build a fish farm or to raise nemaithums or whatever we need to do. We just need some direction. They weren't even asking for money from us at the time. What they were thankful for was the rice that came unexpectedly. That picture you saw of the rice on the truck was taken by Nang Tong because he drove the truck up there with the rice that you bought. So, it's not like you paid for money to UNICEF and UNICEF used 10% of it and got 1,000 pairs of sneakers into the village and now the sneakers are being sold at a profit, right? That's not the way it was working there at Mission in Myanmar. 100% of your money went to buy the food that was absolutely necessary for them to survive. And as a result, some lives were changed there in those villages because the government did not bring relief aid. And so they shared the rice also with their fellow villagers. So you saved lives. You were part of that. But we can keep doing that. The last one is to specifically be praying. And as you are so led and want to be involved, some of you have skills that might be beneficial there. Darren Larson had the vision and desire to go over and teach them about veterinary medicine. They had never heard from an animal doctor before then. And they had lots of questions, didn't they, Darren? Especially about chickens. Lots of questions on chickens and so on. You can be, maybe you have other gifts though. Maybe some of you young men and women want to be the future of going over there and having a strong understanding of English and being able to go over there, learn Burmese, and help educate and train and facilitate. That young lady that was there was taking the video in the one video. She went over last year to teach violin to the kids. She's from, what state is she from? Tiffany. Okay, I can't remember. So she's back east. She had heard about the Mission to Myanmar. She called up Mark, said, could I come over there? She came over there. She stayed there for a year. And she's been learning Burmese and actually doing pretty well. She's learned it pretty well and being a part of their life there. So lots of ways that you can be involved. Do you have any questions?
The children that you showed that were praying, whatever they were doing, you said that they were taken from their homes or they were orphans?
Most of them are not orphans. They're actually they're either given up by their family. When I say taken from their homes, I don't mean forcibly taken from their homes. What I mean is and this has happened at the Bible school too. When a particular patron, benefactor, sees a promising young individual, they will pay to have that person educated and raised. And you have many privileges if you are raised as a Buddhist disciple. You have great respect. You have access to things that the majority of people don't have access to. And so it's a great honor for a family to give up their child. And some of the students in the past years, even from the school here, have been attracted by a benefactor who said, I will make your life easy from this point forward. And you just have to become a Buddhist disciple. Any other questions?
Is the government targeting these elders and these people specifically?
Not anymore. And it's not that they really had them on their radar much before that either. They had Nang Tong more on their radar because he was more vocal and he was on the Commission for Religious Liberty. They've now moved into, with the government change, they've moved into a time of greater toleration of Christianity. So that's not an issue anymore. Now the temptation is the new government making all the promises.
Well, that's what I'm referring to, the money.
Oh yeah, no, well, I don't know if they're specifically targeting the elders. It's just the elders are realizing this is an opportunity to not have to struggle to survive every day. Because we've heard that the government is offering such and such.
How's the Muslim influence there?
Very minimal. But it's there. It's funny because there are certain occupations that are known to be Muslim oriented. So, for example, the eyeglass shop. Tong has had such a bad experience, especially with the Muslim segment of the city, that it was hard for him when he was knowing that I was going in to get eyeglasses made. He says most of the Muslim, they're almost all optometrists for whatever reason, and Yangon. That's about all I can say. Tong went on to say some of the strategies with the Muslims are like, this guy who had given me this great deal in eyeglasses said, "Why are you here?" He found out why I was there, and he said, "Well, tell the elders of the villages that we will, as a charity, give free eye exams, and we will give free reading glasses to everyone." And Tong has had such a bad experience with the Muslims that he interpreted that not as, "Oh, this guy's being nice," but all he really wants to do is give free eye exams so he can sell the eyeglasses. Sometimes we have the same types of responses to people that we think have ulterior motives. And that's kind of the impression that Tong has of a lot of the Muslim groups. I don't know how accurate that is or not. It's a small percentage, though. Remember, 75% is Buddhist. Only about 8% is Hindu, and the same percentage is Muslim, the same percentage is Christian.
What is our church doing to support MMR now? Is it just each of us individually donating and you have a fund established?
So to this point, we have tended to give as there was need. We have not, to this point, established a monthly gift to Mission to Myanmar, mostly because we've been waiting for the information and finally decided, well, we'll make a decision about Mission to Myanmar after I got back, and we had a chance to talk about it. In fact, really, this is the first time Bill and Dave have gotten a chance to see the report, right, on Myanmar on our trip, because I just got back a week and a half ago. So we'll probably be discussing it tomorrow at our session meeting. But you certainly can give directly to Mission to Myanmar. If you want to look on Facebook, Mission to Myanmar is there with regular updates.
We had done something with the other church.
Yes, TCC over in Brentwood had specifically set up, you guys had set up for a purpose, right?
We did a fundraiser, we did a dance.
And what were you ultimately raising funds for, do you remember? Was it just for Mission to Myanmar, or was there...
To do with the orphanage.
So that was when the orphanage at that time was needing repairs. And then they went in and looked to see how extensive the need for repair was and realized it was infested with termite damage and they had to tear the whole thing down.
So it was specific need that we were aware of at the time. So
Yeah.
we did a dance fundraiser.
Yeah. So it went from a need of about $15,000 or whatever it was to repair to $80,000 to repair the orphanage.
I wanted to ask if it does become illegal to convert from one religion to the other, how that would affect the witnessing there.
Well, those are some of the questions that the people had. If I were to say what was I most impacted by in my visit, I was impacted by the fact that the church exists in all nations, all languages, all cultures. So here was a people that I'm working through a translator and I'm teaching the Bible to. And they're not only understanding it, they're singing, like you heard them sing with passion. And they're asking me questions such as, I just talked about husbands and wives. Well, how do we live in such a way as you're talking about with a husband when we are forced to be so many days away from our families for, just to survive? Or we're having to travel all the way down to get training. How on a practical basis? Or Another person asked me, in 1 Peter 3, when it says Jesus went to talk to the souls in prison, what does that mean? And so we had great questions, but one of the questions was, what do we do with the Buddhists? That came up over and over again, didn't it, Darren? Because the Buddhists, like I said, are very aggressive, they're in your face, and they were wondering, how do we respond in turn? And they were just like us. And when I say church in every culture and language, imagine you here in this situation going, okay, so how am I most effective evangelistically with a person when I'm not supposed to do that in my country? And our encouragement back to them is be bold for Christ, continue to be faithful, share the word, know the truth so that you can understand the counterfeit, and so on. And they were faithful to that. So.
And I think if you look at the history where Christianity has been illegal, the church has flourished. So, we want it easy. At times, God says that's not how I do it. So I would anticipate that if it were to happen, that would maybe be a catalyst for a greater evangelistic explosion. It may be underground, like it has been in China and Korea,
Mm-hmm.
but nevertheless,
Makes it shrink, but it purifies it and becomes stronger.
Mm-hmm.
absolutely.
And again, don't think that it's out of the realm of possibility for you to go over and spend some time there if you especially have some gifts or talents that would assist them in what they're doing on a day-to-day basis. It costs $900 round trip to get there. And they will host you the whole time that you're there. And you can impart, if you have medical skills, building skills, those types of things, those might be helpful. Or even just working with the kids and teaching some of the kids. Any final questions?
I'm just curious, how does the physical Christian church manifest itself?
Much as we gathered, they gathered in that same room. They were renting a facility from American Baptist Missionary Society, and they all walk or ride in a taxi. Although most of the people are local to that area that are coming to the church there, or they're part of Neng Tong's family or orphanage and school. And the church is surprisingly a lot like what we are, and the reason for that is Mark has been involved with them for several years now. And one of the reasons why Mission to Myanmar started is because Neng Tong had reached out asking for educational resources for their school. And they got our attention ultimately, and we sent Mark as a denomination over to Tong, and they said, whatever you're willing to help us with, help us look at how we're doing church, look at how we're running our school or in our orphanage, whatever you can give us in terms of biblical wisdom, let us know. So what they look like as a church now, in many ways looks like what we look like on a Sunday morning. Darren?